Hello and welcome to this month's update on the HO2 turnout switching layout. I say this month, so that sounds like it's a regular thing. I don't really have any plan around how regular I update these videos, but seems to be around about monthly, so I hope that's okay. Little bits to report this month. I'm still treading that fine line between consideration, so thinking about things and planning them out before I just crack on and build stuff, and procrastination, where you end up thinking around in circles and not getting much done. And hopefully I'm treading on the right side of that line because it does feel like I'm making progress. So let's have a look at where we are with it. First of all then, the eagle-eyed amongst you would have probably spotted, I've painted a pale blue across the back scene, which is the same colour I used before on Greenville, and tidied up this front edge a little bit for now with this dark grey paint. There's a little bit of work to sort of to be done yet on the end of the layout, which I'll show you in a bit, to kind of help box this in. Talking of procrastination, one of the things I did kind of deliberate over for quite a bit was the back scene. I was looking at commercial offerings, and I was looking at, considered painting my own but only very briefly, but also looking at using sort of cutout or making my own back scenes, basically using Street View and so on as well, and getting them printed up. Ultimately, I think what I'm going to do is leave this pale blue and just cut out a few key buildings from the kind of scenes. And I'm very much looking at, I've kind of put a finger in the map and I'm looking around Monmouth, Illinois, that kind of XCNW kind of area anyway. So cutting out some key buildings and just placing those on the back scene, but quite sparingly, because the idea is it doesn't distract from what's happening in the front. One of the big jobs I've done since the last video is the track. So I've sprayed that with some rattle can brown sprays, gone back in, picked out various ties with acrylic paints that I use for painting toy soldiers, done a little bit of weathering, and then I've ballasted using Woodland Scenics fine, well actually it's Woodland Scenics fine light grey ballast, but mixed in with some other stuff that I'd got in a jar, so I couldn't really tell you what it is. And then gone back and weathered a little bit. And I think for now the track's kind of how I want it. I might go back and do some, I need to do some tidying up from after the ballasting, but I'm not intending to do a huge amount more, apart from adding weeds and stuff when we get into that later on. As for the rest of it, it's mostly been around the placement of the buildings and then just starting to do a bit of work with those. And I have definitely made some sort of changes as I've gone along. So I've been really pleased that I've waited and sort of lived with stuff for a while and just try to sort of picture the scene, if you like, because if I just cracked on and just threw buildings in or really sort of started on construction of stuff, I think I might have had some regrets. So I'm hoping taking this slightly more considered approach will pay off in the long term. So I will get the camera and we'll have a look at one or two specific things that I've been doing. To kind of recap and just describe the scene again for those of you perhaps who haven't visited before, two turnouts on this layout, hence the name. The trains enter from this left-hand side, from a fiddlestick, just sort of off scene if you like, and come in on that curve and then enter the scene until they reach a point down here where they'll use these switches to switch out on the left-hand side. Now at the back I've got at the moment 3 spots to be switched, and at the front where that green box car is where I've got a team track as well, and that's it basically for the industries. Now what I spoke about last time as regards the sort of size of buildings and the type of industry and so on, that's still in a bit of flux. What I am probably going to use, you can just see there's that red coloured box car sticking out of the Pike Stuff building at the back. I think that's something I'll use, or something similar to that in that area. I've ordered a couple of flats which are going to go across that blue space up to where the green meeple is at the moment, and the other hopper, the grey hopper, and where that green meeple are 2 spots which will actually be kind of open. I think there'll be some unloading facility there rather than it being sort of the side of a warehouse or anything like that. So I've chosen to sort of move things around a little bit as far as that goes. The front's still a team track, so that's going to be pretty flat and low level. This mock-up card building here is one that I showed in the last video, and I'll pop a picture up. And this is not rail served, it's just a scenic item that sits alongside the rail. and I've just started to get and mock up something with card and the polystyrenes just to give me a feel for size and shape and so on. This is the front of the building where on the prototype there's some truck loading bays. So I'm looking to model something similar, at least one, maybe two, and use the truck there as the sort of view block, if you like. And it's not immediately obvious, but I've actually cut away a bit of the cork there and tried to get a bit of a slope down to the building. Just a little bit, but again, that's just trying to sort of mirror the prototype a little bit. I'm a bit torn at the moment as to whether to use, that's a piece of card with a concrete sort of pattern on it, image on it, whether to use that or whether to go for sort of plaster and paint and so on. So if we look at this road, this is made using card basically. So I've got some card underneath to give it a bit of the shape. And then this is a print from Scale Scenes. And I quite like the look of them, I've used them before. But again, there's a little bit of me thinking, well, do I actually want to be using that or actually plaster and paint? I don't really know at the moment. And maybe that's something I needn't to be worrying about too much. The building at the back here, or this whole scene, is one I described in the last video. It's not rail served. And it's based loosely on some angle views of a building in Monmouth in Illinois. I think it's a pet food factory or industry of some description. I've added those grain bins that I've used elsewhere to sort of close that scene off, if you like, a little bit. And then right at the end, I've got that odd little triangular building, which again I described in the last video. A little bit more about this building at the back actually, because I was thinking I'd told you all about it, but I don't think I have. I did mention that I was using Tinkercad and the 3D printer to create these sort of panels for this building here. I've put those all together now on a card shell, still to be painted, and some detail added to things like the doors and so on. But overall the building's kind of where I want it to be, and I've got this area in the corner here with the power pole and some gubbins in there, which I saw on the Street View, Google Street View. And then I created this little sort of lunch or smoking area here, which has got a couple of 3D printed picnic tables as well. That was a bit of a bugger to create and put together. So it's a mixture of 3D prints, card, old and new modelling techniques, I think. But that scene, I think, is going to come together quite well. I'm quite pleased with how that's looking at the moment. Now, something I just thought about this morning is that if I'm videoing operations on this layout and I'm sort of looking down this way down the layout, where that little stack of boxes is at the end there, just by the grain bins, is actually going to be a flat end scene. I'm going to be putting that in. But it's likely you might notice that that's the end of the track. It's not actually that obvious from this angle, so maybe I don't need to worry about it. But I did consider putting in perhaps a tree or a billboard, kind of at that spot there, to help view breaks. That's something I might do. One thing I did that I'm really quite chuffed with is these little modern switch stands. I created something in Tinkercad. I knew that the handle itself was going to be a bit of a challenge to print off in 3D. So the little base part is something that I just created in Tinkercad and printed off. Only took a few minutes to print. And then I've basically bent some paperclip wire into the right shape for the handle and then painted it up. So it's a nice kind of mix of old and new modelling styles, really. But I think they look quite effective. They wouldn't stand up to any close inspection by anybody who's interested in doing things at scale, I'm sure. One of the consequences of moving those spots around at the back, I realise, might be that I'll have to redo the little table that I made up for operations using dice. which again I shared in the last video. But actually, looking at it, all I needed to do was swap the meeples around, because the colours of the spots, if you like, have just moved a little bit. So where I've got the green and blue meeples at the moment, they've just kind of swapped places really. So let's run a train.